Today we are going to build a compost sifter. So let me show you what our idea is. The overall concept is really simple. We'll have a big box that is on the outside and fixed in place, with a smaller box on the inside that can move back and forth for sifting the compost. We'll start by building the outer frame. Next, we'll make vertical supports that will hold the outer frame in place. The cart that I have already has slots that will accommodate 1x2 material, so I'm going to take advantage of that in installing these vertical supports. Then we'll move on to building the small frame, which will be the one actually used for sifting the compost. I'm putting 4 bolts through the side of the small frame that will serve as, well, basically my rails to reduce the friction when the small frame is riding back and forth on top of the large frame. Since the small frame will be the one getting the most force applied to it, I'm also going to reinforce all 4 corners with metal brackets. What's not pictured here is the 1/4 inch hardware cloth that I'm installing on the bottom of the small frame. Once all that is done, the small frame will go on top/inside the outer frame, and it'll ride back and forth on those bolts for sifting the compost. Once I put all of that on the cart, the final product is going to look like this. Quick side note here, my amazingly talented wife is the one who did this SketchUp of the final product. There wasn't room in this video to include the entire time-lapse footage of her sketching this, but if you want to see that, check in the comments below, or for a little thumbnail somewhere around here maybe, to see the full video. Step number 1 is to rip this down in half because we're going to use it for the vertical supports as well as the bottom of the sifter frame. Get it ripped in half, now time to cut them down to size. I was attempting to keep this a little bit simpler by not getting out the miter saw, just because it's so big and heavy. It will actually make all of this much simpler to have it. We're going to assemble the outer box along with the pegs that are going to hold it into the gorilla cart. Now we've got our outside box right there that didn't open up. Oh, buddy, you okay? Okay. So now we've got our outside box done. We're going to build our inside box that's going to give it some room to move back and forth for sifting the compost. And we've got a little distraction here. This little guy is sitting in our driveway. Oh, no. Whoa, baby. We relocated him without touching him so that hopefully his mama will find him and he'll be okay. All right, now back to the project. We relocated to the front yard, got all our stuff here. Now we're going to build the inner frame. Okay, we got the inside frame built, but it's the piece that's going to take the biggest beating, so we're going to reinforce the corner some to make sure as it's vibrating back and forth, it's not getting just beat to shreds. Okay, we've got it reinforced at the 4 corners now. You'll notice that I used a 2x3 on one section and 2x4s on the other. The reason I'm using different size lumber is because that's what we had. This is all just being made out of scrap wood, and I ran out of 2x4s, so that's why that section is 2x3 instead. Now that we've got the inner frame built, it is time to get our hardware cloth installed on top of it. And because it's going to it'll have pressure applied to it, I've got these 1x strips here that we'll put on top of that to help reinforce it. Faye decided that she had had enough before we got the screen measured out to cut. So the boys are going to measure out and cut the screen. We're going to staple that wire down and then go back and put the other piece of frame on top of it. Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, now we've got our inside frame mounted on top of our outside frame. I took and I drilled holes, watch out buddy, to run some bolts through so it'll ride on top. So now this can ride back and forth with little tension. So the idea is that I'll take this old saw blade here and I'm going to put a few bolts in it so it will actually not saw, but it will just move this entire frame, so that I can have this sitting here, hit it, and it's going to work this back and forth.
Hey, Papa, let me see.
That's how I'll be able to attach the blade to my frame. Now I have to make a cut there so that I'll be able to pass the blade through and secure it on either side. Moment of truth. I've got the Sawzall connected to the blade, which is fixed on either side of the frame here. So now we're about to run it and see if this would actually do what I think it's going to do. The frame is kind of heavy, so I have my doubts if this will be able to handle it or not. We're about to find out. So it did work, but I do have a problem here. We've got a little bit too much play, so this is getting buried in there, and over time it's obviously going to just split that piece of wood. So I've got to do something to reinforce that so that it doesn't just wear through over time. But other than that, it actually did work. Now we're going to try it out on some compost. It definitely made a difference. So it's separated out all the finer stuff from the larger bits. So we've got, oh, great, just dumped a bunch in there. Really just the fine compost in here. I did choose 1/4 inch, so I'm glad I did, as opposed to 1/2 inch. That actually worked surprisingly well. I do have some issues to work out though. Number one, I wasn't really using the right hardware because I'm only using what I have on hand. And it looks like I lost a nut there, and this is really working itself down into the wood. So I definitely have to reinforce that for that to be viable. But yeah, that one's working itself out too. But by and large, it actually worked out pretty well. Overall, this works like I intended it to, but there's one big flaw with it. I'm pretty sure it's going to burn out the Sawzall over time. It's kind of hard to control. It's hard to keep the Sawzall actually pushing the frame back and forth instead of the frame pushing the Sawzall back and forth. And I'm pretty sure that's just not going to be good over time. So we just manually push it back and forth. A couple shovelfuls in there. Even if I'm doing it, I'm just pushing it back and forth, getting the finer pieces down to the bottom, and then dumping the larger chunks off. The larger chunks we're using to fill in holes in the yard, so that's actually come in really handy. And the smaller stuff is obviously going to fertilize the garden. One quick side note, I did look into buying a motor to attach to it, but honestly, it's just not worth the time and money it would take to do it for something that's meant to be a short, simple project for us. So if I were to do this over again, would I do the exact same thing? Well, yes and no. I wouldn't waste the time on trying to mount the Sawzall to it, but the frame itself actually came in very handy. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found it valuable. And since you're still here, do me a quick favor, click the like and subscribe buttons. That helps us out more than you could even know. Thanks, guys.